Welcome back to my Excel tutorial series for scientists. Today we are in video number 2, and today I'm going to show you how to format your data within Excel. If you want to use the files that I'm specifically using today, you can get them from the link in the description below. They're free to download and use on your own computer. So here you can see we're in Excel, and I have 4 different sheets that we're going to use in this. And the first thing we're going to do is we can see that here we have a country, we have a code and a year combined together that we're going to want to separate out so we can use it better. And then we have this hours per year dash population dash GDP. If you watched the first video, you know that we brought in something really similar to this from a text file. But I want to show you how to simply do this within Excel without bringing it in from a text file if your columns are combined like this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add in a column for each additional column we're going to create. So for example, this is code and year, which means we want one additional column between code and this column over here. So we just want to insert that column in. And this makes sure that we're not writing over any of our data as we're doing it. And this is obviously going to become 3 different columns. So the original column will go in D, then we'll have one in E and in F. And so because there's no more data going to the right, I don't need to create any more columns. If we had a data in E, I'd want to create 2 columns between D and E. So what we're going to do is now highlight the column that we want to separate out, and we're going to go up into data, and we're going to click text to columns. Now, if you watched the previous video, you're going to note that this looks really similar to the text importer that we used before. And it's basically the same thing, but this is using them as text from columns and not as a text file. So we can click next, and we can see that the delimiters, again, the default delimiter is going to be a tab delimiter. Obviously, this isn't going to help us here because these aren't separated by a tab, they're separated by a space. So if we include a space here, you can see now it's separating all of those out, and then we can click finish. So now it's separated out our code and our year really easily. We don't have to re-import anything in or save it. We just hit that text to columns. So now we're going to do something really similar on this column. So if we go up here, we're going to go text to columns. Again, this is delimited. So we're going to click next. And now we can see that it saved our previous options from before. So it has tab and space selected here. But these aren't actually separated by a tab or a space. So I'm just going to unclick these just in case there is any spaces within this. I don't want it to start separating it out by spaces if there's something within the text. So now what I want to do is click other, and I'm going to input a dash. And as soon as I do that, it recognizes the difference between all of these and where they should go. So I'm going to again click finish, and we now have it separated out. And I can click all of this and expand that. And now we can see all of our headers correctly, and we can see all of this. So now this is all separated out just like it was at the end when we imported it in from a text file, but we didn't have to re-import or export it in if this was like somehow saved as a CSV and it had this weird use of delimiters going on. So I've used this a lot whenever like my sample names would include like information dash more information, so that instead of it having sample name here, I can actually pull all of that information into its own columns, and it saves me just a ton of work in the end whenever I've run stuff before. So I want to make sure that you knew how to use that text to columns function under the data tab. So now once you have everything formatted out, we're going to go to format text. So in this case, you can see that here we have all of our countries are uppercase. And over here, we have this code year hours as a combined thing. And so what I want to do is show you how to get different information out of this. So the first thing we're going to do is actually show you how to fix this capitalization over here. And you may not need to know this, but I want to show you it just in case you will. I'm going to show you how to do it as a lowercase, as an uppercase, and then as a proper case. So this is going to be with them all lowercase. Again, this is going to look exactly like this, but I'm going to show you how to do it from the lowercase so that you can see how to do this quickly. And this is going to turn all of these into proper case. So we can just hit equals lower. And we're just going to input this cell here. And now it's going to be all in lowercase. Now, if you don't know, you can always apply a formula going down by double clicking this. But when I do it here, it's not going to do anything. And that's because it needs to be right up against this. So if I delete this column out, and now I do this, now you can see it does that. It converts them all into this lowercase. And that's because it needs something to know how far to go down. If it has an empty column right next to it, it's not going to know how far to go down. So we're going to do upper then. I know this seems so simple, right? So that, again, looks exactly like that. So how do you know I actually did anything? So let's click in this, and we're going to move this onto the lower. And it looks like that again. So we can double click that down, and now we have the exact same thing as before, but we got it from this. Lastly, we're going to do proper case. So this is going to make sure that the first letter is capitalized, but all the rest are lowercase, like how we would generally read it. So you can see it does this. And importantly, if you have multiple words, so like Hong Kong, it's going to capitalize both of them, and that's proper case. Like if I had a first and last name, I would capitalize both my first and last name. And so you can see that's how we can just create different capitalizations of text. The next thing I want to show you is how to actually pull different text out of something like this. So I want to explain what this is to you real quick. So if you've been seeing as before, like we did here, we have a code and year. And so if we come in here, we can see this is the same code and the same and years. And so we can see that all of these years are 2010, but if they were different years, we may want to change out that code in a different way. And then we have hours. And so what this is, you're going to see a B 2000 and an A 2000. So what that means is that this is a country that in this year, the average worker worked below 2,000 hours, or the average worker worked above 2,000 hours. So it's a really quick way to signify what category they fall into. And so you could also create that from this formula using these hours worked, but if you weren't given these hours worked, we would still need to pull it out of here. And there's no reason for you to sit here and like type through and figure it all out. So now I want to show you how we're going to get these three things out. So we're going to have enter. So what we want to get is the code, year, and hours out of this. So what I can do is do equals left. So this is telling it to pull numbers from the left. So I can click the text that I want it to pull from, and then how many letters it's going to pull. So in this case, all of our codes are 3 letters long. So I can have it just pull 3. And then double click that so that it goes down. Here's another FYI. If you're ever double clicking this and it's taking a while to do it, learn SQL. And I'm probably going to have a thing coming out on this channel this year teaching you as a scientist what you need to know in SQL, but it can do these things a lot faster. So that's our code. So now we want the year. So left isn't going to work because this is the center. So we're going to do mid, open, the text that we're going to pull, and then where we're going to start, because we're not starting from the left. We need to know where we're going to start. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we're starting on the 4th character. So we're going to tell it 4, and then we're going to tell it how many to pull. So we want it to pull the year, so we're going to have it pull 4 in. And now we have the years, 2010, and if we do that down, it's all 2010. And then the final thing is we want to pull the hours. So I made this to where all of these are the same character. So it's an A or a B, and then it's 2000. So we want to again pull in the text. We're going to use right this time though, because we're pulling from the right side of it. So we're going to put in the text, and then we want 5 characters. The 2000 is 4 plus the A or the B. And then we're going to close it. So now we have all of that as, made a mistake, guys. We wanted 5 characters. I put in 4. So we're going to do that. There we go. Now we have the A and the B. So now we have all of this separated out, and I'm going to just expand that to make it cleaner. There we go. So now we have all of this separated out. We can now use codes, years, and the hours to be able to do things with, where in this, we couldn't use it at all. It's all unique to the country and the year. So this would have been unusable as actual data to aggregate or anything like that I'm going to show you later on. So that's how to mess with text. Now we want to format our numbers. So we're going to come in here and let's do a few different things. So if you're ever working with dates, this is something that you always kind of want to be careful with working with, especially if you're working with dates where it's not always clear which is the month and which is the day. And this is because depending on where you are or who wrote down the dates, they can actually be formatted differently. So you could have somebody who's writing it day, month, year, and you can have people writing it month, day, year, or day, month, or year, month, date, depending on how it's written. So like in this case, 2/11, is this November 11th or is this November 2nd or February 11th? So you just want to make sure you're checking with the people that you need to check with in regards to dates to make sure that they were all written consistently. So if we click in here, we can see that this is labeled as general. I'm actually just going to click the date fields. So what I did here to be able to select all of it, just click it and then hit Command Shift or Control Shift and down. And it's going to go to the final entry within that set of data until there's a break within the column. So now you can see that this is selected as date because all of these are dates and it can recognize that. So now what we can do is we can have it actually show the day. And so if we have converted it to long date, now we see Thursday, February 11th, 2010. And if we come into more number formats, we can get even more. So this is basically how we had it before. So 2/11/2010, we can have it shown like this. So again, to the year, the month, and the date, we can have it shown like this. We can choose how we show it. And so changing this doesn't actually get rid of any information. It's not confused here. This is just month and year. It's not confused here about what the actual date is. That's still in it. It's just showing you how it's changing it in the way you see it. So if we can easily change it back to short date and we didn't get rid of any of that information. So that's something important working with dates and knowing how to format it and use it. So now let's work on something a little different. So I want to show you how to decrease or increase the number of decimal places shown here. So you can see that there's 4 decimal places shown here. And this is especially helpful if you're working on a formula. So if I did hours worked divided by GDP real quick, so this is going to show me a bunch of decimal places, right? But that might not actually be the significance level that we need, right? Like we may not actually know that many decimal places. It's just doing a calculation. We want to make sure that we're showing an appropriate amount of significance. In this case, we have, a lot of decimal places in both cases. So this may actually be the correct significance. But if it wasn't, we can always increase or decrease the number of places by going up under home and then the number, and we're going to click these two. So this is going to show less, and it's always going to round to the nearest, and this is going to show more. So if we need a lot, we can keep going so that we have a really long list, but maybe we only need, the first 2. So we're going to hide all of those. Again, all that information is still there. So if you use this in a formula, it's not going to input into that formula 0.11. It's going to input in the full number. So that's one thing to be careful of. If you're actually trying to control the significance, you can't just show less and then input it into a formula. Another thing I want to show you is how to be able to actually round a number. So if you want to be able to, say, use this but only to one decimal place, and it actually input that into formulas and everything else, we can click equal round, and there's 3 different options here. So round is going to be based off typical rounding rules, right? So if it's 0.49999, it's going to go down. And if it's 0.5, it's going to go up. You can also always round down. So unless it hits the next integer, it will always round down to the previous integer or round up. So like round up makes a lot of sense if our population was a decimal place. Then we would want to round it up to the next person. So we're just going to round and we're going to hit in the number, and then we're going to hit the number of digits. And so this is going to be the number of digits you want past the decimal place. So if we hit 1, you can see that it's rounding it to this 4. So if we want to not show the 0, we can always just hide it like this. The other thing a lot of people don't realize is you can actually put in negative numbers. So if you put in 0, so let's do equals round this and then 0, it's just going to show you just the integer. But let's say we want just the hundreds because it's such a large number. We don't need all these all the way to the single square mile. We just want it in hundreds of square miles. We can actually do round, open, the number we want, and then -2. So that's now going to give us in hundreds. And if we brought that down, now you can see this says 160 or 16,600. And you can keep going more and more negative. So if we wanted this to just say 16,000, we would do -3. So now it's 17,000 because it's rounding. So that's a way that you can bring it into the more units place instead of just using this to show the decimal places as well. To work on, so this is GDP, which is actually currency. So what we actually want to do is make this look like it's actual money and not just numbers. So we can come in here and apply currency to it. So that's now going to make it look like actual money that is for the GDP and not just numbers. And then one of the final things I want to show you is how to actually convert measurements. So in here, this is land area in kilometers squared. So if you're American like I am, I have no idea what a kilometer squared feels like. So I know miles squared, right? So I can come in here and easily convert this. Now I could go look up kilometers to miles and figure out all of that, or I can let Excel do it for me. So I'm going to do equals convert, open, the number that I'm using, the unit that it is, so it's kilometers squared, and then what I want to convert it into. So if you come down here, you can see they're showing you what a mile square is. So I'm going to do MI2 because it's recognizing this kilometer squared. So it's showing me what it can actually convert it into. Square inches, square meters, all of these. So acres is also another one. And so we're going to just do this. So we're converting the kilometer squared to miles squared. And I don't actually need to know this conversion, and it's going to run it for me. And then I can just drop it down so that all of this is there. So now this is easily converted into miles squared. And it knows several different types of measurements. I mainly just wanted to show you how to use it. That's a few different ways to actually format your numbers within Excel. So the last thing I want to show you in formatting is conditional formatting. So this is where we're actually going to allow Excel to show us visually certain things. The first thing I want to show you is how to show whether something is above or below or equal to a certain number. So what we're going to do is come up into Home, and we're going to go to this conditional formatting. And so we're going to have a highlight cells rule. And you know, before when we had that code above 2000 or below 2000, let's highlight this column based on that. So we want to only have this column selected, or else it's going to apply it to all of them. We're going to go into the highlight cells rule, and we're going to do greater than 2000. And we can change this as much as we want by going to custom format. So maybe the only thing we want it to do is to fill with green. So that's all we're going to have it do, and we're going to click OK. And obviously it's doing this to the header. We can clear this formatting in a minute. It's just a lot of times easier to click the column. So we're going to highlight cells, and we're going to do less than 2000. And we're again going to do this, and let's fill it with this red color. Okay, so in this case, everything is either above or below 2000. Nothing is equal to it. But if we did have something equal to it, then it would just not get formatted at all. And so we want to have a rule that's equal to. So we can do equal to, and let's just have it do a light red fill. Sorry, I forgot to change the number there. So in this case, I did forget to change a number, so I don't want to go in and reapply that. What I instead want to do is go to conditional formatting and manage rules. And so this, I want to edit this rule to change that number. So I want it equal to 2000. Okay. So now you can see these rules are applied. And if we want to remove the formatting off hours worked, we're going to click on it. We're going to go up to clear and click this down arrow and hit clear formats. And there we go. Now all of those formats are removed. So that's how we can do conditional formatting for something above, below, or equal to. So now instead, let's do conditional formatting on a scale. So let's say in this depression prevalence, we don't really know what levels are high or low. We're just trying to get a sense of which ones are higher or which ones are lower relative to each other. So what we could do is like calculate averages and medians and figure that out to do a high-low, or we can just come up to our conditional formatting and we're going to go to color scales. And so these are different color scales where the top is going to be the highest color. So your highest thing is going to have that top color and your lowest thing is going to have the bottom color. So let's make our highest thing red because, we don't really want a high prevalence of depression. So we're going to click this. And so this is automatically going to apply this. This is also a really good way to find outliers in data. So if you have one thing that's really, really outside of the norm, most of your things are going to be on the opposite end of the scale, where that one thing is going to be, at the other end. So in this case, if we had a really, really high outlier, most of these things would appear green, and then that one thing would appear red. And so that's a good way to see if you have an extreme outlier. So we can see certain countries that are lower and then some that are higher. Again, this is based off of alphabetized. So we're not going to see any real pattern here. If we sorted these, which I'm going to show you in one of the next videos, if we sorted these, then we would see a color gradient. So we can do the same thing to our anxiety prevalence, do color scales, and the exact same thing. So this can now allow us to visually see if there are countries, if there's a trend, between depression prevalence and anxiety prevalence, because we can see colors matching, right? So these are both more green, but then you see some where like these are both more orange and these are greener and more orange, right? But they're not exact, right? So there's definitely some that are green here and yellow here, or are really red here and not that red here. So there's not an exact match, but we can see some form of trend, kind of showing up here. Obviously, we would want to do way more work into this before we identify a trend. This is just allowing us to visually look at our data. So another cool thing that we can do is something called data fills. So if we click on this and go to conditional formatting, we can actually have it basically create a bar for the relative amount that it is within that. So let's do something like a gradient fill. Let's do blue. So this, you can see, is a relative bar. So it's setting basically the highest, which looks like it's this one because it's completely filled, It's setting the highest as the full cell, and then it's creating that difference as you go along. So it's kind of a cool way to just look at how it's changing. And so let's do one for the female prevalence as well. And there you go. So now we can see that actually Australia looks like it has the highest for this one, but not entirely the highest for that one, or for the female prevalence, because there's a little gap in there. And so it looks like New Zealand has the highest for the female prevalence. So this is kind of a cool way to just show you, to be able to look at your data visually without even creating a graph yet, just to be able to decide what you want to do with that data. One of the final things I want to be able to show you how to do is to be able to find and locate duplicates using this conditional formatting. So let's apply this to the country. So we're going to go to conditional formatting, and we're going to go into highlight cells and then duplicates. You can also do this for containing certain text as well. So we're going to have it identify duplicates. You can also identify unique values as well, but identify the duplicates and then fill with a light red, fill with a dark red text. We're going to click OK. So now what we're going to see is this does not do anything. If I come in here, do Control-C, Control-V, and hit Control-V again, now you can see that this is going to flag all of these as duplicates because it's within this column, and I applied the conditional formatting to the entire column. If I delete one of these, it's now going to remove that formatting off of here because that no longer has a duplicate within that column. And so that's a really easy way to be able to find duplicates within your data instead of just having, all of your data. If you potentially had like a country and then a year, and you wanted to be able to see if you had duplicate data there, what you would want to do is actually make a unique code. So let's go back over here, and I want to show you this real quick. So for example, here, there's a unique code here, right? And we separated this out over here so that we could actually do data with it. But now if we highlighted this and did conditional formatting, highlight cells with duplicate values, they're all going to be duplicate values, even though this actually isn't a duplicate value, it's for a different country. So what we want to be able to do is actually, so I'm going to actually remove that. So I'm going to clear the rules there. What we want to do is just recreate the country and the year, or the code and the year, so that we have a unique way to identify values. So I want to show you that real quick. So we're going to do code year, and we're going to do equals concat or concatenate, both will work. And now all you have to do is add these together. So we can do code, comma, year. And now we have this unique. So I'm just going to move these over so I can double click to fill down. So now if we applied that same rule onto here, you see we have no duplicate values. So that's a way to create kind of a code or concatenate anything. So for example, just as a quick example real quick, you can actually create dynamic sentences. So you can say, let's do concat. So we're going to say, let's do proper, and you can have formulas within formulas. So we're going to say proper this, comma, we're going to add a space in here. So let's say Argentina, has a population of this and a GDP of this. So then we're going to add in has a population of, let's add a space. Then we're going to add this number in. Nope, this number in. And then a space and a GDP of space with this number. Close, enter. Argentina has a population of 4,008, that number, and a GDP of this number. So now, let's do that. Now, if we just double click this, let me move it over because I always forget to do this. So now if we just double click this, this is going to automatically do this for all of these. So now we can basically create sentences if you need sentences of something and you want it to be dynamic. So now if we, change this number, it's going to automatically change it. So you can see there, that's now a different number. And then Control Z and it automatically adds it back in. So that's a way to be able to use this a little bit differently. So that's a lot of different ways to format your data. And again, if you want to just have easy access to these things, you can always download that cheat sheet that's going to be linked in the description below. And that's going to give you really easy access to remember all these things in case you don't remember them. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to combine data from different tables. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you look at that video that's going to come out next week. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that it helped you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.